Most people spend years studying English and still freeze up the moment they have to speak. Here is exactly why that happens and what nobody in your English class ever told you.
Hey, I'm Emma.
And I'm Alex. This is the Fluent English podcast, where we talk about everyday topics in clear, simple English so you can learn just by listening.
You know what is crazy, Alex? I have met so many people who can read English perfectly. They can write it, they understand grammar rules better than most Americans. But the second someone asks them a question in English, they just blank out. Nothing comes out.
Oh, completely. And I think that is one of the most frustrating things for English learners, right? Like, the knowledge is there, the words are in their head somewhere, but speaking is just a totally different skill.
It really is. And today we want to talk about exactly that. Not the grammar, not the textbook stuff, but the real practical side of becoming fluent and actually feeling confident when you speak.
And if you are someone who has been studying English for a while but still feels nervous or stuck when speaking, this episode is for you. Stay with us, because by the end of this conversation, you are going to have a completely different way of thinking about fluency.
Okay, so Alex, let's start with the big question. What does it even mean to be fluent? Because I feel like a lot of learners have this idea in their head that fluency means speaking perfectly, like zero mistakes, perfect grammar every time.
Right, and that is actually one of the biggest problems, that idea of perfection. Because here's the truth, even native English speakers make grammar mistakes all the time.
All the time. I make mistakes, you make mistakes.
Every single day, I say things wrong, I use informal grammar, I mix things up, and nobody cares, because communication is the goal, not perfection.
So, fluency is really about being able to communicate your ideas clearly and keep the conversation going, even if every single sentence is not perfect.
Exactly. Fluency is about flow. It is about not stopping every 5 seconds to mentally check your grammar. It's about letting the words come out naturally.
And that takes practice. But here's the thing. It takes a specific kind of practice, not just studying more vocabulary lists.
Yeah, because I think a lot of learners fall into this trap where they keep studying, keep reading, keep doing exercises, but they're not actually speaking. And speaking is its own muscle. You have to train it separately.
It really is like a muscle, and if you never use it, it stays weak, no matter how much you know.
So, first thing we want to talk about today is the habit of speaking out loud every single day, even if you're alone, even if nobody's listening.
Okay, yes, this one is so underrated. I actually did something like this when I was learning Spanish. I would just narrate my day to myself in Spanish. Like, I would be making coffee and I would say out loud, "I am making coffee. I need to add sugar. The kitchen is a little messy today."
That is such a good method, because you're not waiting for a perfect moment or a conversation partner. You're just building the habit of producing the language.
And it feels silly at first, I'm not gonna lie. I felt ridiculous talking to myself in Spanish in my apartment.
But it works.
It absolutely works, because your brain starts to get used to the process of forming sentences in real time. And that is the hard part. Forming sentences while someone is waiting for you to respond.
Right. The pressure of real-time conversation is what gets people. Because in a test or an exercise, you have time. But when someone is standing in front of you, waiting, your brain panics.
So, the more you practice producing language, even alone, the less overwhelming that real-time pressure feels.
And you can take it further. You can describe pictures, you can talk about what you did today, you can even just read articles out loud. Anything that gets your mouth moving in English.
Okay, so that is tip number 1. Speak out loud every day, even alone. What is next for you, Alex?
Okay, so the next thing I really want to talk about is the fear of making mistakes. Because I genuinely believe that the fear of mistakes is the #1 thing holding most English learners back. Not their vocabulary, not their grammar, the fear.
100%. And it makes sense, right? Like, emotionally, it makes sense. Nobody wants to look foolish. Nobody wants to say something wrong and have people laugh or not understand them.
But here's the thing. Mistakes are not a sign that you are bad at English. Mistakes are a sign that you are actually using English. You cannot make a mistake in a language you are not speaking.
Oh, I love that. Say that again.
You cannot make a mistake in a language you are not speaking. The moment you start speaking, yes, you will make mistakes, but that means you are in the game. That means you are actually doing the thing.
And most people, most native speakers, honestly, do not notice or do not care about small grammar mistakes. What they care about is whether they understand you.
Yes, communication over perfection, always. I have had conversations with people whose English was far from perfect, but they were so confident and so expressive that the conversation was totally smooth and enjoyable.
And on the flip side, I have met people who technically had great grammar, but were so hesitant and quiet that it was actually harder to have a conversation with them.
Because confidence carries a lot. The energy you bring to a conversation matters just as much as the words you choose.
So how do you actually build that confidence? Because you cannot just tell someone, be confident, and have it magically happen.
Right. Confidence comes from repetition and small wins. Every time you have a conversation in English, even a tiny one like ordering coffee or asking for directions, and it goes okay, your brain logs that as a win.
Yes, and those small wins add up. So start small. Do not try to jump straight into deep philosophical conversations in English. Start with simple, low-stakes interactions.
Talk to a cashier. Leave a comment in English online. Ask a simple question. These small moments build the foundation.
And over time, the nervous feeling gets smaller and smaller. It does not disappear completely, but it becomes manageable.
Okay, let us talk about something I think is really interesting, and that is the idea of thinking in English versus translating from your native language.
Oh, this is a big one, because most learners, especially in the beginning, hear a question in English and their brain goes, okay, translate that to my language, think of the answer in my language, now translate that answer back to English. And that process is so slow.
It is so slow, and it creates that pause, that hesitation that makes you feel like you are struggling, even if you know the answer.
So the goal is to gradually start thinking directly in English, and that sounds hard, but you can train it.
How do you think someone should start with that?
I think you start with simple thoughts. When you wake up in the morning, instead of thinking, I am tired in your native language, consciously switch it to English. I am tired. I need coffee. Simple thoughts first.
And it builds from there, because language and thought are deeply connected. The more you think in English, the more natural the speaking feels, because you're skipping that whole translation step.
And eventually, it becomes automatic. You stop noticing you're doing it. You're just thinking and speaking.
I experienced something similar when I was learning French. There was this moment after maybe a year of studying where I had a dream in French, and I woke up and thought, okay, something has shifted.
The dream moment. That is such a milestone. When you start dreaming in the language, you know your brain has really started to absorb it.
But you do not have to wait for the dream. You can actively push that process by spending more time consuming English content.
Yes, let's talk about that, because this is one of the most enjoyable ways to improve your English, and a lot of learners don't realize how powerful it is.
Watching TV shows, movies, YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, all of this exposure is training your brain even when you are not actively studying.
And the key is to choose content that you actually enjoy. Because if you are watching something you genuinely like, you are engaged and your brain absorbs so much more.
Do not force yourself to watch something boring just because someone said it is good for English. Find the shows you love, the topics you care about.
And try to use English subtitles instead of subtitles in your native language, because when you read the subtitles in your own language, your brain is reading that instead of listening to the English.
Such a good point. English subtitles keep your brain in the English zone.
And over time, try to watch without subtitles at all. Start with shows you have already seen before, because you already know the story, so you are not stressed about following the plot. You can just focus on the language.
That is a really smart strategy. Rewatch your favorite movies or shows in English without subtitles. You already know what is happening, so your brain can relax and just absorb the sounds and patterns.
And this is how you pick up natural expressions, slang, rhythm, the way native speakers actually talk, not the formal stuff in textbooks.
Because real spoken English sounds very different from textbook English. People shorten things, they use casual phrases, they speak quickly.
And if you only ever study from textbooks, you might be perfectly prepared for a written exam, but completely lost in a real conversation.
So consuming real, authentic English content is so important. Podcasts like this one, by the way, are great because you're hearing two people have a real conversation.
Exactly. And you can listen while you're doing other things. On the bus, while cooking, while exercising. You're building your English while living your life.
Okay, let's talk about something that I think is really practical, and that is building a bank of go-to phrases. Because one of the things that makes native speakers sound fluent is that we have these automatic phrases we use constantly without thinking.
Yes, things like, that makes sense, or I see what you mean, or honestly, I think. These little phrases fill the conversation and buy you time to think.
Learners sometimes feel like they have to construct every single sentence from scratch, but fluent speakers do not do that. We rely on chunks, phrases we have heard so many times that they just come out automatically.
So if you learn and practice common conversational phrases, you'll start to sound more natural, and you'll feel more confident because you have something solid to fall back on.
Things like, actually, I was thinking, or the thing is, or it depends, really. These are connectors and fillers that make your speech flow.
And they give you a second to think without going completely silent, which is what makes people feel awkward.
Silence in conversation feels much longer to the person experiencing it than to the person listening. But having these filler phrases helps bridge those moments.
Practice them, write them down, say them out loud, use them in your speaking exercises.
Okay, I want to bring up something that I think does not get talked about enough, and that is the role of listening. Really active, focused listening.
Oh, yes, because a lot of people think speaking is separate from listening, but they are completely connected.
The better you are at listening, the better you become at speaking, because you are absorbing the patterns, the rhythm, the pronunciation. All of it goes in and eventually comes back out.
And active listening means not just hearing the words, but paying attention to how things are said. Notice the tone, the pacing, the way questions are asked versus statements.
And when you hear a phrase or expression you do not know, instead of just moving on, pause and make a note of it. Look it up later. Add it to your vocabulary.
Build a personal phrase book, not just single words, but whole expressions, because that is how language actually works in real life, in chunks and phrases, not word by word.
Okay, we've covered a lot. Let us do a quick recap of the main ideas before we wrap up.
Yes, okay, so first, speak out loud every single day. Even if you're alone, narrate your thoughts, describe your surroundings, anything to get into the habit.
Second, let go of the need for perfection. Mistakes mean you're using the language. Communication over perfection, always.
Third, build confidence through small wins. Start with easy, low-stakes interactions and work your way up.
Fourth, train yourself to think directly in English instead of translating. Start with simple, everyday thoughts.
Fifth, consume English content you genuinely enjoy. Shows, podcasts, videos. Use English subtitles or no subtitles.
Sixth, learn conversational phrases and chunks. Give your brain ready-made building blocks instead of constructing everything from zero.
And seventh, listen actively. Pay attention not just to what is being said, but how it is being said.
And honestly, above all of these, the biggest thing is just consistency. A little bit every day beats a huge effort once a week.
100%. Language learning is not a sprint. It is a slow, steady build, and every small effort adds up more than you realize.
So if you listen to this episode from start to finish in English, that already counts. You already did something today.
Give yourself credit for that. Seriously, a lot of people aren't even at the point where they could follow a conversation like this. You are already further along than you think.
That is such a good note to end on. Progress is happening even when it doesn't feel like it.
All right, that's it for today's episode of the Fluent English podcast. If this was helpful, share it with someone who is also learning English, because honestly, having a friend to practice with makes the whole journey so much easier.
And keep listening, keep speaking, and keep going. We will see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
See you next episode.